Hi, everybody. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. Please hit the like button wherever you are, the affirmation button. Share my video if you don't mind. You know, some chapters are not as interesting as other chapters, but it's all about line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. And each week, we dig just a little bit deeper in our understandings. I try to draw from all of the scriptures, the Torah, to kind of pull it together and help us understand it better. And today we're going to be talking about the boundaries of the land for the 9.5 tribes. Remember, we had Gad and Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh who were on the east side of the river. Today, we're talking about the boundaries of the land for the other 9.5 tribes. Remember, that's 12 tribes. 9.5 plus 2.5 is 12 tribes, but there's a 13th tribe that is Levi. They're going to be treated separately altogether, and we're going to talk about them, I think, next week. We'll see. Yeah, I'm sure it must be next week. Let's get the big picture here. We're talking about the land that the 9.5 tribes are going to get. This is what Yehovah told Abram. Not Abraham. This was way back. This is when he was like 75 years old. Look what it says. It says, on the same day, Yehovah, I'm reading on the right here. On the same day, Yehovah made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your seed, your descendants, I have given this land. Remember, it's always about the land and the seed, the land and the seed. Today, and in future weeks, the seed is going into the land. Who's the seed? Abram's seed. We're talking about Israel, spiritually born Ezra men who are going to move into that land. Look what he says. To your seed, I will give this land from the river of Egypt. River of Egypt. Are we talking about the Nile? To the great river, the river Euphrates. Listen to how many times it talks about the great river, the river Euphrates. We're going to see it talking about the brook of Egypt today, not the river of Egypt. The brook of Egypt and the river of Egypt are not the same river. Many describe the river of Egypt as the Nile. I don't know that Yehovah ever intended us to go quite that far. The brook of Egypt, it seems like what I see most often, but, it's things we got to look at. Let me just read a few more. This is Deuteronomy, and Joshua. It says, here's the next one, Deuteronomy 1:7. Turn and take your journey and go to the mountains of the Amorites, to all the neighboring places in the plain, in the mountains and in the lowland, in the south and on the sea coast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon. I think it's interesting they put Lebanon in particular, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Again, the great river, the river Euphrates. Let's say it again. Every place in which your sole of your foot treads shall be yours. From the wilderness and Lebanon, again, pulling out Lebanon, from the river, the great river Euphrates, even to the western sea shall be your territory. Finally, in Joshua, I've got from the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory. Land of the Hittites. Remember, We're talking about Hittites. They're one of the sons of Ham, like Canaan. Let's look at a map. I want you to see how vast of a territory we're looking at here. I'm going to keep this up today as much as I can. Let me open it up for the time being. Here's the Brook of Egypt right here. If we're talking about the Nile, we're going all the way down to here. I don't think that's what we're talking about, because we're making the boundary of our land the wilderness of Zin, which is just below the kind of the Dead Sea area, kind of by Mount Hor. I'm pointing this out because we're going to talk about another Mount Hor here in a bit. But let me make this a little bit more broader of a map. I'm going to zoom out to 10. And look, here's the Brook of Egypt. Here's the Nile. Up here is the Euphrates, the great river, the River Euphrates, as it's said many times, as we just read. I don't think that's an accident. But when we go through this today, we're not going to go quite that far up. And if we're talking about the River of Egypt, we're not going to go that far down. We're talking about the Brook of Egypt at best. And even the lands that he's going to give us today, that he's saying are going to be ours, I don't think we're going to claim all of them. Was that a lack of faith, or did we get tired, or what happened? Well, let's begin. I'm going to shrink this back down. Kind of set it up just a bit for us here. Let's go down into the part of the world that we need to be in right now. And we'll change that back to, let's say, 50. So here's the bottom of the Dead Sea. Kind of give you an idea where we're at right now. Because we're going to talk about the southern border first. Let's begin with this. It says, command Israel's seed. Remember, we're talking about Ezra men. Israel's seed are Ezra men. They are not the children of Israel. We're not talking about ladies. We're talking about spiritually born men. Men who were circumcised and then took part in the Passover and became Ezra men. It was those men that Yehovah gave his commandments to. It's those men that Yehovah always speaks to when he says, speak to Israel's seed. Now he says, command Israel's seed and say to them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you as an inheritance. Canaan's land to its boundaries. I think it's interesting that they're talking about Canaan's land to its boundaries. Did Canaan have all this land? Certainly, they didn't go down to the Brook of Egypt. They could have gone down to the brook of the River of Egypt, the Nile, but they could have gone down to the Brook of Egypt and probably did, or at least portions of them did. Here's the big picture. This is what we're talking about. Your southern border shall be from the wilderness of Zin. Here we are. Here's the wilderness of Zin. He's going to talk about along the border of Edom. Here is Seir, S-E-I-R. So this is beyond this mountain range. The border of Edom, remember, Seir is Edom, which is Esau's land. Then your southern border shall extend to the Salt Sea. So that's the down and dirty on this. So we went from the wilderness of Zin, the Brook of Egypt, to the sea. So now it's going to be a little bit more specific about what we're going to see. It says, your border shall turn from the southern side of the ascent of Akrabim. Here is Akrabim. This is the ascent of Akrabim, where it goes. They call it the ascent. In fact, it's really difficult to read this. Let me see if I can zoom in on it, just so you can kind of see the path that's going in here. I think if I go to 150, yeah, there's the ascent of Akrabim. It's a very, very steep trail, bunch of switchbacks to get us from the bottom, where the Salt Sea is, all the way up to the top and heading towards the foothills of the mountains. That's where we're going to start. We're going to have a path. There's a port, probably down in this area at one point. The Salt Sea has changed its dimensions as it has shrunk through the years. But I think it went down much further. Here's Zor right here. So Zor's been around for quite a while. But they're going to talk about a dock or a port that is on the Salt Sea. Let me just show you where those are. I think I've got it here. It says this is the big picture, but then we have the smaller picture. And again, here is Joshua 15 gives the big picture. Then it talks about the smaller picture. Here's the big picture in green. So it was the lot of the tribe of Judah's seed, according to their families. The border of Edom at the wilderness of Zin southward was the extreme southern boundary. So that we're talking about Edom, and we're talking about the wilderness of Zin, just like we're talking about here in Numbers. It says, was the extreme southern boundaries. And their southern border began at the shore of the South Sea. From the bay that faces southward, then it went out to the southern side of the ascent of Akrabim. We just saw where the ascent of Akrabim is. Passed along the Zin, wilderness of Zin, ascended south to Kadesh Barnea, and passed through Hazron, Adar, Karka'ah, where it passed through Asman and went to the brook of Egypt. The border ended at the sea. So this is kind of where we're talking about today, because it's going to say exactly the same thing. Let me pull up my map again. I think I should go zoom back out here. Here we are. Okay, so actually, I'm going to give us a little bit more room than that. Let's go to 50. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so ascent of Akrabim. Then it says continue. I'm on 34:4. Continue to Zin, the wilderness of Zin here, and to the south of Kadesh Barnea. Here's Kadesh Barnea. We're going to be south of that, still kind of on the border of the wilderness of Zin. Then it shall go to Hazar Adar and continue to Asman, two towns that we were just talking about. The border shall turn from Asman to the brook of Egypt. So here's the brook of Egypt right here. And that takes us down to and it shall end at the sea. That's our southern boundaries. Now again, it doesn't go all the way down to the Nile. Not sure that was ever intended. The word they use for river can easily be changed into brook as well, though it can also be used as a sea. So it's hard to tell sometimes what we're really talking about. Now we're going to talk about, so we went from the brook of Egypt. We're going to talk about the western boundary. Western boundary is easy peasy. It is the sea. The western boundary, the western border, you shall have the great sea for your border. This shall be your western border. So yeah, easy peasy. So we're going to move this up the border, and we're going to come all the way up to this part of the world. Oh my, I'm going to zoom back out. Do I need to zoom out? No, I don't want to do that. And this shall be your northern border. So now we've taken it up. We're going to the northern border. And this shall be your northern border from the great sea. So we're leaving off at the sea. Then it says Mount Hor. I thought, Mount Hor? To my surprise, there's two Mount Hors. There's one in the north and there's one in the south. Remember, it was Aaron who died on Mount Hor on the border of Edom back in our 40th year in the wilderness. So here's Mount Hor. Now, this is Lebanon. Look at this. This is here. Here's Tyre. Here's Sidon. And this area is Lebanon. And this is actually, it says Lebanon Mountains. This is the Lebanon Mountains that has Mount Hor in it. So this is where Lebanon is. Remember, many of the cedar trees that Saul used in building the temple, the first temple, came from Lebanon. So here we are at Lebanon. Now it says, they were talking about the northern border. From the great sea, you shall mark it out to the border line to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, you shall mark your border to the entrance of Hamath. That is this entrance here. This is dare I call this kind of a pass? It's a lowlands between two mountains. Here's Hamath, right here. So we're talking about this entrance. It says, then the direction of the border shall be towards Zedad. Here's Zedad. The border shall proceed to Zephram. Again, another one very close. And to Hazar Anan. There's Hazar Anan. Now it goes on. Actually, it's going to change. So this is our northern border. Now, look. This has got quite a long ways to get to Euphrates. Why isn't the Euphrates our northern border? Okay, so now it says you shall mark out your eastern border. And they said from Hazan Anan, here it is, Hazan Anan, but now it goes back. You shall mark out your border to Hazan Anan to Chevron, and the border shall go down from Chevron to Riblah. Here's Riblah. On the east side of Ain. Ayin, perhaps, is that word. I don't know where that is. But look where it goes from here. The border shall go down from Riblah and reach the eastern side of the Chinneret. The eastern side of the Chinneret. So it sounds like we're going down this valley to the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is the Chinneret. It's actually got several names. We'll talk about those in just a second. But I wanted to point out to you, here's Damascus. Here's the land of Bashan. Remember, it was Manasseh, half the tribe of Manasseh, that got all this land, the land of Bashan. and all the way up to Mount Hermon. So it makes sense that we're going from Riblah all the way down here. This is going to be Israel's land here. There's Dan is going to have some land in here. Some other tribes are going to have some land in here. And then we're going down to the Sea of Galilee. It says the east side of the Chinneret. Here's the Chinneret, Sea of Chinneret. This is another name for the Sea of Galilee. The Chinneret, Lake Gennesaret, Sea of Tiberias, all the same sea. So we kind of got to keep in mind when you see these things that what it is we're actually talking about. Let's read this. I'm reading this portion right here. One king was Sihon, king of the Amorites. Remember, that's where we took the Bashan from, who dwelt in Heshbon and ruled in Gilead. Oh, that wasn't the king of Bashan. That was the king of Heshbon. He was in Heshbon. He's the first king we took out. Ruled half of Gilead from Aroer, which is at the bank of the Arnon, from the middle of the river, even as far as the river Jabbok, which is in the land of the Amorites, and the eastern plain from the Sea of Gennesaret as far as the Sea of Arabah. Yeah, okay. So he had, remember, he had a finger that went up. Let me pull up our map again. He had a piece that went up. He got all the way to the Jabbok, but from the Jabbok, he had a finger that went all the way up to the Sea of Galilee. He had another finger that went up this direction, and then Manasseh had all of this. Let's continue. So he says, from the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, Chinneret, the border shall go down along the Jordan, and it shall end at the Salt Sea. So all the land between here and the Salt Sea is going to be the 9.5 tribes' land, including all this side, all the way to the ascent of Akkabim. So we've done a full circle in understanding where this is at. Now, it says, this shall be the boundaries of the land with its surrounding, this shall be your land with its surrounding boundaries. And Moses commanded Israel's seed, saying, this is the land which you shall inherit by lot, which Yehovah has commanded to give to the 9.5 tribes. Now he says, for the tribe of Reuben's seed, according to the house of their fathers, and the tribe of Gad's seed, according to the house of their fathers, have received their inheritance, and half the tribe of Manasseh has received their inheritance. The 2.5 tribes have received their inheritance on this side of the Jordan. They're still on this side of the Jordan, across from Jericho eastward towards the sunrise. And then we had kind of the same notes going on. And Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, these are the names of the men who shall divide the land among you as an inheritance. Eleazar, the priest, and Yahushua, the son of Nun. Yahushua. It's not Joshua, it's Yahushua. I'm going to try and use the Hebrew names as we go through these. Part of it is my own learning, but I wanted you to at least kind of hear some of these. And you shall take one leader of every tribe to divide the land for inheritance. Here's what I hear happening. I think we're talking about Eleazar and Yahushua dividing up the lands by tribe. It said in Numbers, it was earlier on, probably Numbers 29-ish. It said that the bigger tribes would get a larger tract of land and the smaller tribes would get a smaller tract of land. So after that has been divvied up, I think then we're going to talk about doing certain amounts by lots. And these men that we're going to choose from each tribe, I think are going to work with the tribe elders to decide who's going to get which tract of land within each one of these major tracts of land, if you will. So the first one it says, these are the names of the men from the tribe of Yehuda. Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, from the tribe of, I guess that was it, from the tribe of Jephunneh. Then it says from Simeon's seeds tribe, Shemuel, this Ben Amuhad. From Benjamin's tribe, Eladad Ben Kislan. 22. A leader from the tribe of Dan, Buki ben Yagoli. From Joseph's seed, this is B'nai Joseph, that's why I say Joseph's seed, a leader from the tribe of Manasseh, tribe of Manasseh's seed. So Joseph's seed, remember there's two men, Manasseh and Ephraim, that came from Joseph. So we're talking about Joseph's seed. Now we're dividing it into Manasseh's seed and Ephraim's seed. Manasseh's seed is going to have Haniel ben Ephod, a leader from the tribe of Ephraim's seed, Kemuel ben Shiftan. Moving on. A leader from the tribe of Zebulun's seed, Elizaphan ben Parnak. A leader from the tribe of Issachar's seed, Paltiel ben Azan. A leader from the tribe of Asher's seed, Ahihud ben Shilami. A leader from the tribe of Naphtali's seed, Pedael ben Amihud. These are the ones of Yehovah's. These are the ones Yehovah commanded to divide the inheritance among Israel's seed in the land of Canaan. So again, we're going to give the bigger tribes are going to get larger tracts of land. Within those tracts, these men are going to use lots to divide the land. They must do it. They must have had the elders of these tribes, the elders of the tribe of Naphtali, got together and they said, okay, this is our land. Let's divide it up. And so it all looks nice to everybody. And then we're going to decide who's going to get what lot, or what lot is going to be given. So, you pull this straw, we're going to have a bunch of straws, and this straw will represent this lot, and depending on how many families. But even within that, there's going to be families of families that are going to have to divide up the land. So it's quite a process. And to do it equitably without, you can imagine there'd be some feelings. Oh, he got a better plan than I got. They've got to work it out ahead of time so that it all each plot looks pretty good. And then they draw straws and see that it's done by lot. He can't complain, well, he got a better piece because it's done by lot. So it makes it more fair. This is what's going on to kind of keep the emotions from getting out of control, let's say. I said, these are the ones which Yehovah commanded to divide the inheritance among Israel's seed in the land of Canaan. That's the end for today. I guess this was a very short one. I didn't realize this was going to be so short. In a way, there's a portion of Yasher that I want to finish before we start Deuteronomy. But I think I'm going to wait until next week, since next week's going to be our last portion in Numbers. So it might be that would be a better place to talk about that. It's going to end with the death of Moses, which I think seems to me like would be a good ending place for Torah. I've had many thoughts through the years that Torah might just be 4 books instead of 5 books. Oh, Michael, what are you saying? You know what? Line upon line, precept upon precept, there's going to be, and you're going to see this, that there are many mistakes. We'll call them mistakes, errors in Deuteronomy. Many things that are said in Deuteronomy that do not agree with Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. We've got to make some conclusions about that and at least be aware of those kinds of things. So many people start from the word of God is the unerring word, No, it's not. There's lots of challenges with Torah, and you throw in the New Testament on top of that. Oh my gosh, it's total confusion. No, Yehovah's words are those that he spoke himself to Israel. It was Peter who talked about you err because you don't know what was the word that he used for that? It was basically the words of Yehovah. What he actually said. Those are the words that says, speak to Israel's seed and say to them. We're not going to see that in Deuteronomy, but we see it all the time in the first 4 books. Well, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. At any rate, these are things that we have to work out. We have to come to some conclusions on. At any rate, thank you for joining me. We'll pick this up next week when we talk about the cities of refuge and the Levites' land. All right. Hey, thanks for joining me, and catch you next time. Bye now.